And I'm happy to say Aloe Blacc joins us now from Los Angeles, California. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me.
I didn't know, I must say, I didn't know about playing you that song in the intro. I didn't know if it was one of those situations where you were so tired of hearing it.
Not at all. I'm happy for any of my songs to be played anytime, anywhere.
You have a good relationship with it?
Absolutely. For me, the songs that I've been able to create and the ones that have become popular are, it's a blessing, and I will not ever deter anyone from playing my songs.
I'm excited to hear some new music from you right now. This is your song, My Way. What can you tell us about it before you perform it?
My Way is a song about self-determination. It's about going for your goals no matter what obstacles are in your way. It's part of this thematic style of writing that I do that I call AIM, affirmation, inspiration, and motivation.
When did you first come up with that?
I first came up with that when people kept asking me, what kind of music do I make? What style? What's the genre? And I was really having trouble sticking to one genre. I would say folk soul. I'd say I do a folk soul vocal. But the genre of music that I've recorded and released music in has varied over the years, from hip hop to R&B to soul to folk to dance. And so I feel like, I'm a singer-songwriter. I write songs. You can produce them in any genre you want. But the type of songs that I like to write as a songwriter follow a theme. Genre is really, that's the producer's job. For me, my job is theme.
Well, I want to talk more about that in just a moment, but let's listen to the song. This is Aloe Blacc performing My Way off his forthcoming album, All Love Everything. Grammy-nominated singer and songwriter Aloe Blacc performing his new single My Way off his forthcoming album, All Love Everything. So you were talking about AIM and that you tend to write songs in a theme. I have to say that's not something I've heard a lot before. Typically the variation that I will hear is in the songwriting itself, and the consistency is largely in the music. When did you make this decision that there was a viewpoint you wanted to give out in your music?
I don't know that I've made a decision. I just feel like it's always been the way that I have conducted my songwriting. I started out in hip hop and I'd had no boundaries, really. I was able to sample and learn from every genre of music. And ultimately, when I start writing a song, what ends up feeling good to me is to write a song that's a story of triumph over adversity. And largely, the way that I write has to do with, I think, my outlook on life and, always feeling like anything is possible. So when it comes to writing a song, if I'm not sticking to a specific story, then what will naturally happen is that I will write a song that is themed around motivation and overcoming adversity.
Have you given, not that we're on the chair here, not that I have a big gray goatee that I'm going to stroke for you, but have you given any thought to why? Like why that in your unconscious or why that in your art comes out, the struggling against adversity?
I think it probably comes from my tendency to always want to fix a problem. I'm a process-oriented person. I think about how to solve issues, and in song form, the way that I think it comes out is struggling against some sort of oppression or obstacle and eventually achieving it. And that comes out way more in a vague thematic way than, sort of a very sterile process list or recipe, because I don't think that would make for much of a good song.
But how do you avoid being cynical?
How do I avoid being cynical? I recognize that making any kind of progress in life, whether it's personally or socially, whether it's with, our justice system here in the U.S. or with your family at home behind closed doors. It's a process of constant vigilance. You can't rest. When you rest and allow for mediocrity to consume you or to allow for hatred to consume you, then you've got much more work to do to overcome it. So if you're constantly vigilant, almost like gardening, you can, in weeding the garden, you can make some headway. And when there's, optimal biodiversity or balance in your garden, the tables will turn and things kind of start flowing with much less effort. I've got a few, for me, I've got a few personal mantras, like do what you will so long as you do not sufficiently inconvenience others. It's kind of a hedonist creed, but at the same time, there's that one caveat, which is so long as you do not sufficiently inconvenience others. What's a sufficient inconvenience? It's very subjective, but when you put that in conjunction with compassion, love thy neighbor, then you have a better way of tailoring that subjective measurement of what is a sufficient inconvenience. I feel like looking at life as though I'm water, right? So I think about path of least resistance, go with gravity, fill the container. These very esoteric, but very simple concepts of how to conduct life.
Well, yeah, I think we need more and more of those these days. How about being a father? I mean, you're a father since your last record. How's that impacting your music?
Yeah, it definitely impacted my music by allowing me to focus on a whole new side of my humanity. The amount of love that I can give and receive was not something I ever paid attention to before getting married, before having kids. And kids definitely demand more attention. So I didn't steal the attention that they needed away from them and put it into music. I took some time off of music in the way that I was doing it before, 24/7, and created a new schedule, a schedule that considered my kids and what they needed. And that's the biggest difference, is just being there for my family. But in terms of lyrically, artistically, I've taken some time to engage topics that have to do with being a father, raising children, being a husband, and being devoted to my wife. So these are the kind of things that have changed for me.
I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier. Take a listen to this.
Hey, you remember when you were just a little kid in the summer and the days are getting hot and school was like ending and this girl that you thought was cute was like bending your brain, making you insane, trying to figure out how to ask her out, see what love's all about. But
that's a little bit of a song called Lovesick from Eminem in 2002. You were one half of that hip-hop duo along with DJ Exile. First, how do you feel listening to that back? I was trying to read your face a little bit while you were listening to it.
Oh man, I feel good listening back to that. I think my hip hop days have educated me in so many ways around the music business, around how to be a songwriter, an entertainer, a performer. I feel like the music that I did with Exile was formative. It helped develop me, and it also helped develop him in a way that has allowed him to have, a very fantastic and well-respected career.
But I've read that by singing soul music or folk soul or whatever you want to call it, you were able to access something different that maybe hip hop wasn't giving you.
Oh, definitely. So, hip hop gave me facility with words, gave me rhyme scheme, meter. It gave me stage presence. What I then was able to bring from that to the singer-songwriter world was the ability to write a song quickly, because I had so many words I had access to, so many ways to rhyme. All I needed was inspiration, an idea. And then in the way that, what's his name? Wow, the author's name is escaping me. Old Man in the Sea.
Hemingway?
Yes, Hemingway would, from what I understand, would write, and then when he was done writing, he would start editing, but pulling as many words that were superfluous out, right? And that's how I feel like songwriting is. In hip hop, we have maybe 10, 12, 14 words per bar. In singer-songwriter, and what I do as a folk soul artist, we're probably 4 to 8 words per bar. So we've got to be very sparing, very deliberate with each word that we use. That is the kind of thing that I think this part of my career can help educate me on in hip hop, right? Knowing how to be more deliberate, more specific, rather than filling bars full of words that aren't absolutely necessary. And what I've found is that, in a lot of ways in hip hop, there are so many devices I ended up using, from, alliteration and entendre, that a lot of singer-songwriters don't use in pop music. They get away with, really, a lot of my contemporaries are getting away with murder. It's really, to me, it's upsetting. But I find that because I have this access to this regimen, I can do what needs to be done from an emotive standpoint. But then when you read it on, and that's with my voice, with the words, with the melody. But then when you read it on paper, it can do the same. And then if someone who really understands poetry and is educated reads it, they can analyze it and say, wow, okay, there's literally a plethora of device in here that's not being misused and adds to the story in a way that I think all songwriters should be doing. But, this is a business. People sell widgets these days, and if people want to buy a pet rock, so be it.
Is it endemic in the industry? Or is it something that's always been there? Is it worse now than it was before?
Nah, this is the industry. I think that's the word that basically is the operative in this whole situation. It's an industry, right? And so in an industry, you try to reduce your input and maximize your output. Any company knows that. You reduce your costs and sell it for the highest price. And if that cost is the amount of time that it takes to write a good song with, proper attention, but you can still sell it for the same price or more, that's what an industry does.
What did you learn about that working with someone like Avicii? I mean, Wake Me Up became the biggest song in the world for a while, and Avicii, of course, died in 2018, and I'm sorry for your loss, and I'd love to talk about him a little bit, but that's an instance of you having a song, and similar to the first song we talked about, having a song, obviously playing by the rules that you've set for yourself and the expectations that you've set for yourself, but that had that sort of crossover into massive success that we don't often see.
Yeah, I look at that song as an example of everyone coming to the table with 110%. Tim was able to make production that transformed his genre. It was genre defining in the way that people look at what he was able to do, combining the sound that he created with the style that he was borrowing from, which was bluegrass and country, and then my vocal, which is the folk soul vocal. As a producer, anybody could have done that, but nobody had yet, right? And he was able to assemble the right parts, me being one of the constituent parts to that whole. Mike Einziger brought 110%, having complete mastery and facility of his instrument, knowing how to articulate the notes and the chords, but also just knowing the dictionary of chords, right? That's important. And he didn't invent any new chords, but he understood what was important for people to feel, and that with that rhythm, with those chords, at that tempo, there was a feeling. When I walked into the studio, they had already come up with the chord progression and the rhythm of the guitar part, and I pulled out my lyrics and said, here's an idea that I think will work. And we all agreed that it worked. And this is how the song was written, but it's also just an example of trust and going into a situation where you trust that everyone's going to offer their best, so you offer your best as well.
I could talk to you about intentions in the music industry all day, and I'm so unbelievably curious as to your thoughts on it. But there's a couple of things I wanted to get to before, because I didn't want to take up too much of your time. You've been very vocal during this moment happening right now against racism, police brutality, and you're part of a coalition of musicians that are calling for reform in terms of police in the United States. Why was it important to join forces? Why was it important to have a coalition with other artists?
The main part of having the coalition is so that the message is magnified at the same time. If I'm sending out a tweet or a message, an Instagram message or Facebook post, it will reach my followers. It's not going to get to trending status. And so when we have multiple artists sending out the same message at the same time, it gets to trending status. It makes a difference to our senators and lawmakers, the representatives, to our governors and mayors, to our council members, when they see this kind of action and activity happening online. It really does move them, and it has.
And what is that? What is that message that this coalition?
Well, the message is that justice is important, and that there are systemic racist laws and practices within our system. We've found them, we've identified them, we're naming them, and we're calling them out. So the one in particular that I'm pushing hard to have repealed and ended is called qualified immunity. This is a Supreme Court doctrine that was established because of the Ku Klux Klan and was supposed to protect citizens, but over the years had been interpreted in ways that ultimately then protected police officers. And it protects them such that they cannot be held accountable for their actions, whether they are reasonable or unreasonable. They're supposed to only protect police officers for reasonable actions, not unreasonable. And that's the issue. This law says that we can't try a police officer for his actions that are reasonable or unreasonable if it's never been tried before.
In a civil lawsuit.
This is particularly civil lawsuits because we don't even, we're fighting for the criminal lawsuits, but district attorneys are reticent to do any prosecution against police officers because in order to win a district attorney election, you need the 10,000 police officer votes to get into your position. So you basically are held, you're in handcuffs, no pun intended, because if you go against them, they'll retaliate. And they retaliate in many different forms. There's definitely intimidation. I've had a council member tell me that when he started making moves that were against the police's wishes, he was intimidated by police officers parked across the street from his house every day, all day, just telling him they want to keep him safe, right? These are the kind of things that gangs do, right? Extortion tactics. And so when I'm not relying on the DA to do anything, I'm looking for an opportunity to remedy a citizen who has been harmed, to offer them, if the principal income maker of their home has been murdered by police and they need some quick financial remedy to sustain the household, a civil lawsuit should be the way to go. But since our Supreme Court has made it impossible, they've made it impossible to the point where it even chills the possibility that a lawyer will take the case, because the lawyer is going to be like, it's going to be a waste of my time. I'm just going to lose money. So it ends up being a lose for the citizens who need a remedy in this situation. It ends up being a loss for citizens who need accountability. And it ultimately ends up that there's no deterrent. It ends up that there's no deterrent for misconduct.
Do you see a relationship between this part of your life, this advocacy and this activism? And we're specifically talking about a qualified immunity, but just in general, and the music that you're making, the sort of the first part of this conversation.
I know that there is a connection. I'm not sure that everybody else will see it, but
What do you see it as?
As a hip hop artist, I've always been focused on justice, on the plight of the underdog, right? And so with this overcoming adversity, the fight for justice is part of that. I have been using, as a singer in the major music industry, I've been using my music videos to help tell the story as well. So, for my larger songs like Wake Me Up, my acoustic version, and The Man, and Love Is the Answer, there's a very, very clear discussion about justice and overcoming the adversities of the underdog.
Are you ever talking to yourself when you write songs about overcoming adversity, when you write songs that are about keeping going when things get very challenging? Are you ever singing to yourself?
I would say that My Way was that, for sure. In general, I feel like I have a very blessed life, and I want to pay that forward. I want to offer the blessings that I have to people who need it. And I don't necessarily feel as though there's a lot that I'm bucking up against in my life and my career, except for with My Way. There was just a time with the record label that I was on where I felt like I wasn't able to get the music out that I wanted to get out, that I wasn't able to share the voice that I wanted to share at a certain point. So My Way was really a song where I felt like I was speaking, my own personal truth.
It feels like it gives you something, and it feels like it certainly gives us something at a time of great uncertainty.
I hope so. I hope that my songs can do the magical work of what music does, offer comfort to people.
Well, it's been a joy to talk to you, and thanks for making the time.
Thank you.